where the moon lights.
An excellent day for an exorcism.
I'm your number one fan.
Hey up and welcome back to the Rate Scary podcast. My name is Scary Zara Mary and I have a guest with me today, a returning guest, my very good friend, Celebro. Say hi. Celebro.
Hi, Celebro. No, I'm just kidding. Hi, Scary Zara Mary.
Otherwise known as Sam, which I will call you through this rather than your online persona.
Sure.
You alright, love?
I'm all right, love. How are you, love?
I'm alright, love. Nice to have you back on here.
I'm glad to be back. Thanks for having me.
Obviously, you joined me for the Nosferatu episode when I was very first kicking off the podcast.
Yeah.
So you're like a little bookend to this gothic chapter. We started with Nosferatu, and I'm wrapping up gothic horror with the film we're going to be talking about today, which is Dracula. You're just all about the vampires, aren't you?
Yeah, I think we found what I like. Yeah. I mean,
Your
it's
little
cheese
niche.
and it's vampires. That's what I'm talking about.
Well, and this is pure coincidence as well, but I am wearing my Nosferatu hoodie today as well.
Which I am jealous about.
I know, it's good, isn't it? It's got as well on the sleeve, succumb to the darkness.
That makes a difference for me. Now I kind of want one.
There you go.
End up walking around Tesco's like this.
Yeah. It's from my very good friends, Ghoul Cemetery, who make the most incredible, like after a film is released, sometimes even before a film is released, they'll create merch, t-shirts, hoodies, hats,
Okay.
sweatshirts for that film. And I've got so many from them. So there you go. I'll put a link in the episode notes for this recording so people can go and check them out. And they're bloody lovely as well. So you can go and get your own Nosferatu hoodie.
That always helps, doesn't it? If you don't know, get to know.
Exactly. We'll kick things off with a question that I asked you before. Can you remember what the question was?
What did you have for tea?
Hey, there we go. Go on then. What did you have?
I'll tell you what I had. I had noodles with southern fried chicken and
Ooh.
like I don't even know what you'd call it. Like, you know, the egg that's got it's like a boiled egg, but it's still got the like dippy yolk.
Soft egg. Soft boiled egg.
I had a soft egg, soft boiled egg, 10-10, and I loved it.
That sounds delicious. So like a ramen jobby you've had this evening then.
Absolutely. What about you though?
We had a pizza with some garlic dough balls and some little chicken bites. Just a couple of little snacky bits.
Yeah, I'd have been in for that. That's awesome. I rate it.
It were delish.
Yeah,
M&S special. M&S shout out if you want to sponsor the podcast. I love your meal deals that you do on pizzas.
Send us some of those big daddy bars as well. That'd be
yeah.
Please.
Oh dear. Right. So today we are talking about Dracula, like I've mentioned. Iconic. We are talking Bram Stoker's Dracula. Important to note that because there are so many iterations of Dracula. We've obviously covered one in the form of Nosferatu, but this is Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula from 1992. I'll give a very typically when I do these episodes, I'll go into quite a bit of detail about the story, but I am going to assume that everyone knows the story of Dracula. So, as a brief summary, this version of Dracula is loosely based on the classic novel by Bram Stoker. We have young barrister Jonathan Harker, who is assigned to a gloomy village in the mists of Eastern Europe. He is captured and imprisoned by the undead vampire Dracula, who travels to London, inspired by a photograph of Harker's betrothed, Mina Murray. And in Britain, Dracula begins a reign of seduction and terror, draining the life from Mina's closest friend, Lucy Westenra, and Lucy's friends gather to try and drive Dracula away. That is Dracula in a nutshell. Anything you want to add to that story summary?
I think you hit the nail on the head, to be fair. And I think that for people that haven't seen this is a very romanticised version of Dracula, isn't it?
Yes.
Where we've got a key theme of romance.
100%. Like, this is it, even the tagline for the film is "Love Never Dies," and I think it's such a perfect film when it comes to gothic horror. When I asked people about what's your favorite gothic horror, the one that was mentioned the most was Crimson Peak, which I've talked about with my friend Sam a couple of weeks ago. And then this one was the second most mentioned. I can't remember how many times. And I think it is because of that romance element. And also with the tagline, "Love Never Dies," there's often a theme of death in gothic horror as well, life and death. And I just think that this version of Dracula executes that so beautifully compared to others. It almost borders on erotic.
Absolutely. Yeah.
At
Very
times.
seductive film. Yeah.
Yeah. You said that very eagerly. Absolutely.
Absolutely. I nearly jumped out my chair.
Give me a bit of a rundown as to, because you are an enormous 1992 Coppola Dracula fan, and you can do a bit of a show and tell for those watching on YouTube in a second of some of the stuff that you've got. Why are you such a huge fan of this film?
Yeah, I mean, it's a question that I get asked a lot because I think a few people are initially quite surprised by sort of Bram Stoker's Dracula because I think a lot of people love it, but for people to say it's their number one film, I think it's, I wouldn't say it's everybody's cup of tea. I love the story of Dracula. I love the story of the immortal vampire. But I think that Francis Ford Coppola gave us something very special. I think he almost sent himself mad making this film. I think there's many elements that make this unique in its own right. I think Gary Oldman, my favourite actor stemming from this film, portrayed the Count in so many different ways. There's so many different elements to the Count within this film. He's not just a creepy old vampire. There's so many different layers, and you see this character come to life in various stages. And I just think that that opening scene sets the tone for this film perfectly, and I remember sitting there watching that scene for the first time and thinking this is going to hit a little bit differently, and I still get goosebumps watching it now. To put it in a short answer,
Talk to me about that opening scene then. Obviously,
I'd be delighted to talk to you about the
go
opening
on.
scene. I mean, we're talking straight away. The film doesn't mess around. We're talking right at the height of. Because this film will tell you about Balad the Impaler as well, and how he was this young prince, and he was betrothed to Elisabetta, and he went out to war. And when he came back from war, he finds that his wife has thrown herself from the tallest tower in his castle because an arrow was shot through the window carrying fake news of Dracula's death. And you see this rather... Let's be fair. This rather good-looking, charming prince fall into madness very, very quickly, and I think that there's a slow-building tension as you realise, and there's this crescendo, this music, and I think it's Wojciech Killor or something. I can't say his name properly. His soundtrack for this film, I think, is stunning, and you feel this sort of tension building and building and building as Dracula becomes more angry, more upset, starts renouncing God, and there's things that happen in this film that I don't think have happened in many other films. We've got statues crying blood.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh Lord, we've got statues crying blood. We've got this, and I think there's a moment for this in this moment that I don't think many people speak about, and it's Anthony Hopkins is playing one of the priests, and he basically says, "Yeah, her soul will not go to God. Her soul will not go to God. She's killed herself, etc." And why, bro? Why are you saying this? Like this guy's mad enough.
Yeah.
This guy's mad enough, and you will see this completely sent into madness. And the thing is that I think you really feel it as well. Gary Oldman just showcases every single element of grief, anguish, and right as this music's building up, it just ends with this huge primal scream. I think it's the greatest opening to a film ever. You've got the title screen that comes up under the flames right at the point that he's just snapped and said that he's going to come back. Woof. And then we're in.
Well, and I think, again, that opening scene is another great indicator as to this being a real gothic horror film, because it's blatantly occultism, it's Satanism, because after he learns that his wife has ended her life and is denied this salvation, he denies God and he makes a deal with the dark forces.
Yes.
And symbolically verified with him plunging his sword into the crucifix, which immediately starts to bleed these excessive amounts of blood that he drinks as a sign of a blood pact with the devil. So right from the get-go, you are told this is gothic horror, strap in, because we're going to do a really good job of it.
Yeah, 100%. It's so powerful.
Some of the other themes that I picked up on, actually, when I did a rewatch of this, because I love this film as well so much.
Yeah.
Like, we'll come on to how it looks and the cast and everything, but I did a bit of a deep dive onto some of the other themes that we've touched on. And one of the ones that I hadn't picked up on, but is really obvious now, is there was a writer called Frank Rich. He was a writer for the New York Times, and he suggested that the film drew on the fear at the time, because this was 1992. There was a fear at the time, late 80s, early 90s, regarding HIV and AIDS, a disease that is transferable by contact and transfer of blood. And according to him, Coppola gives the viewers a film that frightens and arouses them by playing off their unchecked fear of the spread of AIDS as an invasion of the bloodstream.
Yeah.
And you've got Van Helsing commenting to his students that civilization and syphilization advance together, and it's viewed as a commentary on Coppola's times during the spread of HIV/AIDS, as much as it was Bram Stoker's. And according to speculation and some biographies of Bram Stoker, he died potentially of syphilis. So I just thought that was such an interesting thing that I'd not really thought about, but
Me
totally makes sense.
Yeah,
So,
I've never thought about that at all.
Contextually, at that time, absolutely that fear makes sense for this film. And I think another theme that I did pick up on, which is, again, all based around fear, is this theme of the other. So both in the novel and in this version, the Count is seen as the other. He's foreign. You've got like Jonathan Harker and you've got Mina, who represent the British Empire, and they are unmarked, they are normal. And then you've got Count Dracula himself, who is a colonizer, he's a foreigner, he's a lord in a Balkan country. And it's just this invasion, this foreign invasion is a theme. The differentiating thing being with this film is that's romanticized through Mina's love affair that she has with him. So it's almost welcomed, but certainly in the novel, that was a real fear. So yeah, I thought that was quite interesting. Another one that's quite commonly used in Gothic horror, like this monstrous other. You see it in Frankenstein as well.
Yes.
I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, it's a really interesting film that has many layers, because I suppose that the Count is a complete rejection of all that is good, isn't he?
Yes.
And despite the fact that he's showcased to have feelings and that there's a sense of empathy because he's longing for his long lost love, you know, the times that he sort of has the crucifix position and turns into rats, and he turns into the bat and sets the crucifix on fire. There's many sort of rejections of God throughout this. So he is this sort of foreign presence that doesn't mean well. And I think that that's really interesting.
I think it's probably a good point for us to actually talk about some of the characters. Like we've kind of touched on Mr. Gary Oldman. So if I run through the cast, we have Gary Oldman as Count Dracula. We have Winona Ryder as Mina. Anthony Hopkins as Van Helsing, which every single time I rewatch this, I'm always like, oh yeah, Anthony Hopkins is in this. I don't know why it surprises me. I think because he's so young in this.
Yeah, and he's good in it as well.
He's really good.
He's good.
We've got Keanu Reeves as Jonathan Harker. But then you've got like some other big names in there. So Richard E. Grant as Dr. Seward.
Yeah.
Carrie Elwes as Arthur Homewood.
Yep.
Sadie Frost as Lucy Westenra. And I did see as well Monica Bellucci on rewatch as Dracula's Bride.
That's right.
But like proper star-studded cast, even in the supporting roles. I think we should probably start by talking about Mr. Gary Oldman, because if I make you talk about some of the supporting cast first, I feel like you're going to burst.
Yeah, I'm going to get upset.
Talk to me about our Gary then.
Well, Gary, who like I say, I mean, I consider to be one of the most talented actors to ever live. I think he gives us a very tortured count, doesn't he? And I think that Gary just personifies in this film for me that sense of a slow building revenge. I think he personifies anger, a little bit of guilt as well. I think he carries a heavy burden with him in this film. But he's just so intense, so intense as the Count, as he welcomes Harker in. There's that sense of dread there that behind this smile is this ancient creature that hasn't really seen a social status for a long time and hasn't seen the outside for a long time and has become this bitter, twisted creature that has a plan that isn't going to bode well for the rest of us.
Yeah.
And Gary personifies that, and I think he showcases this so well. And what's so impressive about Gary's performance for me is when he goes from this young, vengeful Count to this old creature that talks about traditions and talks about his family heritage and his blood and how proud he is of it and how fiercely protective he is of it as well. And then he transitions into this young, charming Count. And I think that whenever I think I'm being cool, or whenever males think that they look cool, they need to remember that they're not Gary Oldman in the blue glasses and grey suit cool.
Correct. Because it's like, aside from anything, he plays, 4 or 5 different iterations of Dracula in this film?
100%. It's such a layered performance, isn't it?
Yeah. Like, and although he is playing the same character, those different iterations of the same character are so different and chilling, and he really strikes this balance of, regardless of which iteration he's playing, of being terrifying and menacing and something to be feared, as well as sexualized, romantic, sensual, like even old Dracula, like when he's licking the razor blade and stuff.
Where are we going here?
No, listen, right, this is not another Count Orlok situation.
Okay, just checking. Check that out if you've not seen it. It's interesting.
No, this is not another, although, no, I'm kidding. Stick a mustache on it and I'll consider it. No, it's just, there's that, he's playing the eroticism. Not that I find it erotic, but he's playing on it, like the way that he has this lust for blood.
Oh, yeah, it's incredibly powerful. And that little scene that you mentioned when he licks that razor blade and that sheer euphoria that he feels and that ecstasy, you can just feel it, can't you? He relishes it. Like, you're absolutely spot on.
And I like that we see that in him as well as we see it in, like, Mina, for example, her lust and wanton need for him and his touch and everything that he can give her. I like that that's not just played through one character.
Yeah.
So, again, like, another reason why it's so heavy on the romance, this film, to the point of being sexualized.
Yeah, 100%.
I did read about Gary Oldman that he said that the main reason why he agreed to the role was to be able to work with Coppola. And it was his first big American film on a big set, loads of costumes. He was obviously a very young actor at the time. But he said that another reason why he wanted to play Dracula was just because he wanted to say the line, "I've crossed oceans of time to find you." And he said it was worth him playing the role just to say that line.
Yeah, what a line.
Of all the lines in the film, that is my favourite. Have you got a favourite line from the film?
That is certainly one of them. I do think that even he says it. He says it in Romanian at the start, I believe, or I don't know if it's Latin. The blood is the life, and it shall be mine.
Oh yeah.
But I think one of the most underrated scenes in Dracula, and it's a line that I think is incredibly impactful. Where he sort of comes to the window. And he's sort of looking at Lucy, and he's playing he's casting his spell on Lucy, and he just says, "Your impotent men with their foolish spells cannot protect you from my power."
Yes.
Sheesh.
He knows how to string a sentence together, doesn't he?
He does. Gaz. He definitely does.
I would not know what to say in those moments. If I suddenly turned into a Dracula, into a vampire tomorrow, I'd still sound like this. Like
Me too.
I would not be a well-spoken, literate, poetic vampire. I'd be like, oh heck, I fancy some blood. Chuffing hell, I'm starving.
That bloody sun's doing my head in.
Yeah, chuffing hell. Is it not night time yet?
Oh God, Northerners. I love it.
Maybe that's what we need. Me and you, Sam, we can team up and create a Yorkshire version of Dracula.
I would like that. I think that would be a lot of fun.
I think so too.
I can already think of our supporting cast as well. Let's contact some people and make it happen.
Excellent. Right. If you're listening to this and you fancy funding this project, just reach out to either one of us. Or if you fancy starring in it, you've got to have a northern accent though.
Yeah.
Like all diversity and inclusion and equity rules apply. Open casting call. However, you've either got to have a Yorkshire accent or do a Yorkshire accent. The exception being Sam, who doesn't have a Yorkshire accent, but never mind.
That's something, isn't it?
Oh, speaking of accents, let's come on to another cast member. Do you know who I'm going to say?
The only real mistake in this film.
Keanu Reeves.
Dreadful.
Go
Absolutely
on, tell me your thoughts.
Dreadful. What did he do? What happened here? I mean, listen, Mr. Coppola, you made a film here that's my favourite film. What did you do this for? I don't understand. Yes, quite right.
No.
I can't take it seriously. I'm getting mad thinking about it. I mean, Keanu, I think he said that he wanted to cast someone young. He wanted to cast someone good looking. He wanted to reach a certain audience with that particular casting. And, you know, Keanu is a good actor. He's a good actor. I think he's been in some great stuff. And I think that as time's gone on, he's really found himself. I think Matrix and John Wick, etc. is great. I hated this casting. I hated it.
I think it was Christian Slater that he originally had in mind.
That would have worked really well.
Yeah, but went with Keanu. Coppola said that he wanted some kind of matinee idol for the part of Jonathan because it's such a great part. And his thought in his mind was, if we were all to go to the airport, Keanu is the one that the girls would besiege. So he wanted someone good looking, young, of that time. And we have Keanu, which absolutely fits. It's just such a shame about the accent. I think it was voted in various different polls like one of the worst accents in a film of all time. Coppola had said that if he'd worked harder on his accent, he worked harder on his accent than most people realised, and said he tried so hard. That was the problem, actually. He wanted to do it perfectly, and in trying to do it perfectly, it came off as stilted. I tried to get him to relax with it and not do it so fastidiously. So maybe I wasn't as critical of him, but that's because I liked him so much. To this day, he's a prince in my eyes. Oh, I just feel so bad for Keanu in this because that accent is such a mistake.
It really is. It really is. And you know, I think you really, it's really hard to take him seriously throughout this film, even in key moments, you know, like towards that conclusion. Our work is finished here. Stop talking, Keanu, you know? It's hurting me now.
But like, even, so obviously we have a modern day comparison, which we can do now, which is 2025's Nosferatu. You've got like Nicholas Hoult in what is essentially that character. Nicholas Hoult is British, so obviously he's going to do a better accent, but he doesn't try to do some sort of stilted, well-to-do accent in it. It's just a very nice, rounded British accent, and I think that's probably where Keanu went wrong.
Yeah.
He's tried to portray this well-to-do person with this particular accent that I can't even do, so I don't know why I'm trying. So yeah, such an error. He looks wonderful in it.
He does look good.
I think generally he is good in the film. It is, if you were to remove his voice and replace it with someone else, then it'd work so much better, unfortunately.
I do agree. Yeah, I agree with you.
What a shame. What a shame. Winona. Winona Ryder is Mina. Thoughts?
Okay.
Yeah.
I like Winona actually. I really like Winona. I don't think this is her best role, if I'm honest, and I think
No.
that's a little bit controversial for some. But again, another slight miscast for me, and it's crazy because I think that even though this is my favourite film, I am still critical, and there's still things that
Yeah.
I dislike, and I think that Keanu and Winona, I don't think that they were the right cast for this. I really feel strongly.
Do you think that they had the right level of chemistry between them?
Um, I don't think it feels quite as natural as it does in other films.
Mm.
I think, in terms of chemistry, actually, with Winona, a point that I did want to make is that it feels more real between her and Gary,
Yes.
and yet they didn't get on.
No. No, they
It speaks to
didn't.
acting prowess. They did prowess. Sorry, prowess. There we go. Third time lucky. I think it speaks to both of their acting prowess because they didn't get on at all, and I don't think you feel that in the film.
No. That does not come across in the film at all. I think I read somewhere that like they were really pally and then one day just came back and that dynamic had changed completely. And I think she said it was because of him
Yeah,
and the way that he was behaving and approaching the role and stuff like that,
yeah,
which I think most people know about Gary Oldman. Like, he can be quite difficult to work with. I think in
absolutely.
some scenes he was drunk as well. So,
Yeah,
like
I
the
read that.
scene licking the razor blade, he was drunk when they filmed that. Comes across really well. But
Yeah.
I've no doubt that he was an absolute chuffing nightmare to
Yeah,
work
I mean,
with.
there's clips, isn't there, of him and Francis Ford Coppola arguing
Yeah.
that you can view online, where they're arguing on set with each other.
But well, sometimes the best things come from the worst situations, don't they? And
Absolutely.
that's not to downplay whatever had gone on between him and Winona. But like you say, it doesn't come across on screen whatsoever. But you're right. You definitely don't get that same level of chemistry between her and Keanu.
Yeah.
And another thing that I read about actually regarding those two is their wedding that is in the film. Have you read about this? The fact that
Absolutely.
yeah, so they did it in a church, so an Orthodox Catholic church in LA, and they had a Greek Orthodox minister. So technically, under the eyes of God, they were married because of that scene, not legally, but in the eyes of the church because they use that minister, and she will still text him to this day and say, "Hello, husband."
I know, I love that. I love the fact that they do that and they have a laugh
Yeah,
about it.
that's so sweet. So, yeah. I think the last person that I want to touch on, and then you can bring up whoever you want to talk about,
Of course.
is the person that I always forget is in this film, which is Anthony Hopkins as
Yeah.
Van Helsing. Thoughts?
Great.
Yeah.
Crazy. In the best way. I think he's fantastic. I really do. I think he's unhinged, and I think he's got what I think is evident with his performance in this is that he's seen the dark arts and he's seen the darker side of the world that this film discusses. And I think what's really interesting is that it's sent him a little bit mad, but it's not destroyed his purpose. And his purpose is to rid the world of evil, and Dracula is that ultimate evil. This is the ultimate prize. And he's so excited by the fact that Dracula is now come into his radar, swam into his orbit, that Anthony Hopkins plays this mad scientist character in a very sort of visceral and I think almost primal Van Helsing, because his life's obsession has come to fruition. I love it. The more I watch it, the more impressed I am with it.
I think his performance as Van Helsing is probably, despite me always forgetting that it's Anthony Hopkins, whenever I rewatch it, it's probably one of my favorite portrayals of Van Helsing because I feel like he gets the balance right. Like he's eccentric, but he doesn't play an eccentric.
Yeah.
So he has elements of eccentricity and excitement and fear and challenge without fully committing to each one of those things, which I think you find in other films. Like they go either into full like action mode, must kill, or full complete bananas mode, whereas he strikes a balance across each of those things, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree with you.
which is credit to his acting. Like, we know Anthony Hopkins is an incredible actor, but
Yeah.
I think this is often, point proven by me, an overlooked role of his. Because I always just forget, I don't know why, I always just forget that it's him that's in this role. I think
Yeah.
maybe because he looks so young in it, I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love him in this so
He's
much.
so good.
Did you want to talk about any of the other cast?
Yeah. So I think that a performance in this that is scary for me, vulnerable, and actually quite funny is Sadie Frost as Lucy.
Yeah.
She is fantastic.
And terrifying and
And
beautiful.
terrifying. I think it could be the scariest moment in the film, her moment. I think, because Lucy actually is a massive victim in this, because while she's so cocky and full of life, in the best way, in my opinion, I think Sadie Frost plays her beautifully.
Yeah.
And she's so much fun, and she's that crazy friend that I think we'd all love to have in the best way. And, she's got sort of people that lust after her, etc. She's used to having the eyes of various powerful men. And then our boy, D-Man, comes along and effectively destroys her for no reason whatsoever. And I remember as a young sort of Sam watching this film back and sort of saying, is Dracula evil or is he just in love? And I watched it again and realised how he treats Lucy. And it makes you really, and I love the fact that they did this because it really pours into that evilness of Dracula and the fact that Lucy's just this ploy, she's just this thing that he casts aside for no reason whatsoever. And obviously he turns her, he takes her through this torture, murders her, no two ways about it, and she comes back, doesn't she?
Yes.
And those scenes are still haunting today. I remember reading that the child that she carries down the stairs was terrified, kept crying. They had to keep retaking the scene because she was terrified. I was terrified watching it as a kid, I'll tell you, because the way she comes down the stairs, that ethereal music that's playing, it's really creepy stuff. And I think that Coppola was genius with this because, and again, it's the weird techniques that he used to make this film, and I think we'll touch on it. But that whole scene of her in sort of getting back into the coffin after she sort of vomited the blood everywhere, it's all shot in reverse.
Backwards, yeah.
Which I think is great. And
which is incredible.
Yeah,
on her part as well, to act it in reverse.
Yeah.
As well, because that'd mess with your head doing it in reverse. But the effect that gives, you're right, it's ethereal, it's creepy, it's haunting. It's so good.
It is. Great character.
Great character. And like you said, despite your feelings about Lucy and the way in which she behaves, a total innocent in all of this.
100%. Yeah, like you say, while she's so confident and she's, she's full of life, isn't she? She's like a completely fun character. But she, let's not be honest. I mean, let's be honest. Let's not be shy. She likes playing these men off against each other, etc. And why not? Because she's in a position where she can, and then she suffers probably the worst fate out of everyone in this film for no reason.
Completely. It'd be interesting, actually. I don't know if it has been done because, there are so many iterations of Dracula that I haven't watched them all. But I just think it'd be quite interesting, actually, to see a version of Dracula that focuses more heavily on Lucy Westenra and her experience, because she is always just a side piece in the story. It's always about Mina, whatever iteration you watch. Whereas actually she is an innocent in this. She's a prop almost to demonstrate the evil that is Dracula and his powers.
Yeah.
So I just wonder if there's maybe we can do that with our Yorkshire version of Dracula.
I think so.
Our Lucy Westenra, told from her perspective.
It's a powerful plot point, and Sadie Frost is still really, and I'll touch on the community later, she's still really active in the community and stuff. I've got friends that have sent Sadie some things that they've painted, various props, and she's signed them and sent them straight back, which I think is awesome. And I think I much prefer Sadie's performance as Lucy than I do as Winona's as Mina, and that's not a knock at Winona. Maybe it is, But I think that Sadie played Lucy phenomenally well. I
Yeah.
think it was very vulnerable, very cheeky, and then when
Yes.
it all switches and it gets turned on its head and she's got to play this undead creature, whew, very scary.
Horrific. Yeah, I agree. Absolutely terrifying. Probably scarier in those scenes than some of Dracula's
I agree.
scenes as well, because that character of Lucy, she's freshly turned, she's animalistic, she doesn't know what it is that she's experiencing, she hasn't got this wisdom and experience that Dracula has. So it makes her all the more terrifying and unpredictable as
Yes,
well.
definitely.
We've already kind of part touched on it, but it'd be good to talk about those special effects. Like we've seen them with those scenes with Sadie Frost getting back into a coffin. This film, like Coppola was so intent on I am not using CGI for this film, to the point of he hired a visual effects team, but when they told him that what he wanted to achieve were impossible without modern digital technology, he disagreed and fired them and replaced them with his son, Roman Coppola.
Yep, fired the lot.
Yeah, which is commitment. But when you look at the film, you can kind of see why, because he
Thank God he did
achieved
it.
it.
Yeah, he achieved it, and it still looks so good today, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It holds up today. All of those practical effects look wonderful. Even like the blood red sky and like the eyes in the sky, like all of that achieved by putting different slates into the film. Like I just think it's so clever, and I wish that was used more in films today rather
I
than
agree.
relying on CGI, because it just gives a different feel to the film,
Yeah,
especially when it comes to gothic horror. I think Robert Eggers is probably the one that has come closest to it with Nosferatu, because he
I
is
agree.
so passionate about practical effects rather than CGI. But oh god, it is just such a gorgeous, gorgeous looking film, and I think that is mostly in part to the special effects.
Definitely, yeah. I think there's huge points about this film when it comes to sort of the practical effects side of things. I mean, I think I read that Coppola essentially wanted Dracula's unnatural. He's an unholy presence in this film, and things don't sit quite right when he's around. And you notice this when you are introduced to him in his castle, and rats are running upside down along the
Yeah,
ceiling, water's dripping upwards. It doesn't
physics
make
doesn't
logical
work
sense.
correctly around him. Yeah, you've got
Exactly.
blood dripping upwards and stuff like that. Yeah.
Love that. Love that. And that makes that shows a lot of power. And as he sort of walks in and you hear these screams as he's walking down this hallway. And there's a lot of imagery in this film as well, a lot of sort of religious imagery that Coppola drew on. But even the practical effects, such as the castle, is actually based on an old statue called a picture of a statue called the Black Idol,
Okay.
which is really cool to look at. And if you type in the Black Idol, and this is for anyone that's a fan that's watching, if you type in the Black Idol and then you type in Dracula's castle, it's exactly the same.
Ah.
And there is, and I think it's in Dante's Inferno where you see the sort of brides and they walk away in that sort of crab motion. That's also based on it as well. So this man had done
Okay.
his homework. He got some very specific things that he wanted to put in this, and I think the practical effects side of things is probably the most prominent. And like the suit of Dracula when he's in the bat costume still looks fantastic today,
Yep.
and it looks
Yep.
like a slimy, horrible creature. It's done so well; it looks real.
100%. And I think that particular iteration of Dracula is definitely it's not one that you see commonly in Dracula media, but have you seen What We Do in the Shadows?
Yes, I
The
have.
TV series as well as the
Not
film.
all of it. I've seen
Okay.
a couple of seasons.
So in the very early season, we've got Doug Jones playing. I can't remember the name of his character, but he is blatantly playing on Coppola's Dracula
Yeah,
as the Bat and as the old version of Dracula. It's
yes,
like a meshing of the two, and I picked up on that as soon as I saw it. So even though, like, I feel like this version of Dracula has gone on to inspire so many other forms of vampire media because it is just so iconic. And again, I think that's in part down to the practical effects that we used. If this had been done digitally, even if it had been digitally enhanced in any way, I don't think it would have had that same impact.
I completely agree with you. Yeah, I think the practical effects have allowed it to, and you hear me say this a lot, stand the test of time.
Yes, definitely. And we see that with a lot of films. It's always a big bugbear of mine. Like, if you can't do CGI really, really well and really, really pummel your money, your budget into it, don't do it.
Yeah.
Rely on your practical effects and
Yes,
do a really good job of that instead.
Yeah.
Well, I think the time has come for us to talk about costuming and makeup.
Because this is where the budget went, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. Like, he chose to spend so much money on these costumes to showcase the actors, and he referred to them as the jewels of the feature. And it was built on this premise that the costumes were more important to the film than the sets were, which is so different to so many other films. But you can see very clearly in this film, it works so well. Like, the costumes that are in this film are iconic. Talk to me about them, Sam.
Listen, I think that there's imagery in this film with the costuming that have just that you see all over the place, and there's huge inspirations in sort of modern films and older films that have drawn from this film. For instance, the very start, the dark red, sort of blood red armor could have looked ridiculous. It could have looked stupid, and it just doesn't. It works so well because not only does the costuming come across as bold, brave, loud, it complements the scenery perfectly.
Yes.
And I think that that's such a good translation because, like I say, I mean, this armor, I'll get the figure. I will get the figure.
Please, yes.
So we can get the 3D model out, and I think we'll talk about it now on how it works.
Oh,
Let me see if you can still hear me. One moment. Let me take these out. Right. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what we call costuming.
Oh, isn't he beautiful?
Yeah, yes, I can. Look at that. I'll bring it closer because I know that's what you all want. 31 years old, collect dolls, by the way. Well, follow Celebro collects. We do figures there. Look.
Oh, hi, Gary.
Hi, Gary. Just a little brooch, and I think that no one would look at this that hasn't seen this film and think Dracula.
No.
And yet now that this has become such an iconic image, hasn't it? Because and this is what we mean by sort of emphasizing sort of the youth and charm of Dracula as he comes into his own and he restores himself to his prime. I just think that this looks fantastic. Like, I think that, for me, one of the coolest images, in fact, the coolest image that you could have. I mean, Victorian Dracula, we see cosplayers all the time with this, don't we, Z?
I did it, yep, for 31 Days of Halloween last year.
And she nailed it. You need to check it out. She nailed it. I want to do it, but my hairline won't allow, so someone find me a wig.
I've got a wig you can borrow.
Excellent. See, this is friendship. This is teaming up right here. But yeah, no, I mean, for me, it was a seamstress that made this as well. She made
wow.
it 1/6 scale. Yeah, it was an artist called Spencer. And I reached out to him and I said, can you do me this? This is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Do you think you could make it as a figure? And he said, yeah, I think I could. And he did. And he sent me some pictures. And I said, please take my money from me. And then here we are. But even the sculpting. But I think looking at the imagery on this one here, like the blue glasses, etc., you wouldn't just see that in your mind and think Dracula. Watch this film and you'll see nothing but Dracula. And you'll think of top hats and you'll think of Victorian wear and think, how do I look as Gary Oldman in this? How do I look as good as Gary Oldman does in the suit? The answer is you won't, but you can come close.
No. But again, in our Yorkshire version of Dracula, we can dress you up like that if you want.
We can try.
I've got a wig.
Yeah, we can try it, can't we?
Yeah.
We can try it and we'll see how we go. Now, I think that this, and I've promised that I've got to leave this to Zara in my will if anything happens.
Correct.
It's part of the reason that I'm nervous to be real life friends because I don't think I'll own this anymore. Just kidding.
He's beautiful.
I mean, this thing could have looked absolutely ridiculous in the film. But this here, the helmet was called the Red Wolf. Although a lot of people seem to think that it was called the Dragon because, of course, he's part of the Order of the Dracula, etc.
Yes.
But this particular helmet itself was called the Red Wolf. And again, religious imagery. You've got the sort of crucifix there because
Yeah.
Gary Oldman starts as a man of faith as Dracula, doesn't he, as a young man? And this, my friends, is what you call, I think, too much spare money and being a little bit too obsessed with the film. But the imagery it strikes a chord. And you're a huge fan of the armor, aren't you?
Oh, I love the armor. I just think it's so iconic.
Yeah.
It's the fact that it's red more than anything, and it looks like muscles. There is no other armor in any other film that I have seen that looks anywhere near as beautiful as that. Like, forget
Really?
the
That's
helmet.
your favourite armor ever then, in fiction?
Ever.
Really?
Ever. And it's mainly down to the colour. Just the fact that it's
stunning.
That red.
Yeah.
But it is also the fact that it looks like muscles. I can't remember the name of the designer. I'll pop an image on screen for people that are watching on YouTube, but there is a designer that does a bag of the helmet, and oh my God, I want it so bad.
Yeah, this bag's incredible. It looks so good. Let me just pop this guy by. Now, sort of looking at the figure and looking at sort of images of the armor, which you can go and see in Coppola's winery in California, by the way.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, he's got a little prop sort of dedicated to his films, and you can go and see Lucy's white dress as well. But it's incredible. Like you say, it's almost like exposed flesh. It looks just otherworldly, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I've read as well, so the costume designer for the film, Aiko Ishioka, was given complete freedom by Coppola to design his clothes, and came up with that suit of armor. But she decided that Dracula would be both male and female, old and young, ugly and handsome, animal and human. And I think the armor is a great representation of that. Like, it's not really, it is masculine, but it is also feminine because of the color, because of the exposed muscle. Yeah. Then obviously the other figure that you've shown us, the Victorian Gary Oldman with his top hat. Like, I chose to do a gender bend cosplay of that because there is an element of androgyny to it with his hair, with the glasses. There is a bit of an air of femininity.
Of course, he's completely in touch with his feminine side, yeah.
Yes, and like we see that through his romanticism, and there is so much in like the monstrous feminine and feminism when it comes to vampires. It's so closely linked, which I'll not get onto in this podcast, but probably will do later down the line when I talk about vampires. That I think it's such a smart move by Ishioka to play with genders when it comes to specifically Gary Oldman's costuming in the film, because it makes him even more of this entity, I think, compared to other Draculas. Instead of doing the typical cape and the peaked hairline and stuff like that.
Yes,
it's really something different. It's a new Dracula that we hadn't seen up until this point.
100%. There's so much, and I'm going to say it. There's so much sort of risk taking in this, and I think obviously it's paid off beautifully. But Dracula absolutely has that gentle nature to him, doesn't he? And that's what people hadn't seen before. While he is this monster, and that monster's still there. There's this gentleness that isn't, associated, and I think back then as well, with masculinity, etc. But there's that gentle, empathetic nature that Dracula showcases in this film that I don't think a lot of people were used to and thought of when they thought of Count Dracula. And I'm so pleased that they touched on that.
Agree. Well, and it landed them awards as well.
Yeah.
So this is one of very few horror films that has actually won Academy Awards, not just one, but 3. One was for Best Costume Design, another was for Best Makeup, and then the third one was for Sound Editing. It was nominated for more, but it won those 3.
Yeah.
And Academy Awards aren't the be-all and end-all. It also won God knows how many Fangoria Awards, which is a genre award. So Best Studio Film, Best Actor for Gary Oldman, Supporting actor for Anthony Hopkins, screenplay, makeup effects, soundtrack. Saturn Awards, it won Best Horror Film, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Writing, Best Costume Design again. So
That's huge, isn't it?
It's massive, and there are so many other awards as well. Like I just picked out the Academy Awards and those 2 genre-specific award programs.
Yes.
It won loads of others. Like it won British Academy Awards as well. And I just love the fact that it is specifically won awards for the costuming and makeup.
Yep.
Because it was so iconic, because obviously so much money from the budget was put into that. And I think, again, it's another of the reasons why this film still stands the test of time. If they hadn't have put all of that budget into it, it could look really dogged and aged by now.
Yeah, 100%. There was risks in this. Like we've spoken about, and we've spoken about the fact that this wasn't traditional Dracula costuming. Gary Oldman doesn't wear a cape in this film,
No.
Which would have been blasphemy. I think if people had read reports about Dracula will not wear a cape in this film, people would have been like, "Oh my God, cancel this film!"
Yeah.
Can you imagine that now? But I think that something that's really interesting, you'll have just seen me clicking in the background now, and apologies for my initial rudeness, but the Bram Stoker's Dracula, and this is what I love about this film, is it struck a chord with many, hence why we're talking about it now, of course. And I've said that while a lot of people wouldn't associate Dracula traditionally with that kind of outfit, so many people, I'm going to contradict myself now, so many people know that is Dracula because of this film. And I'm looking currently now and I'm a member of this Facebook group, and if you're a fan of this, you should join it. It's Bram Stoker's Dracula, Francis Ford Coppola, 1992. It's a public group on Facebook.
Okay.
It has 127,200 members.
Wow.
Which is incredible for a singular film. For a singular film, a gothic horror film, to have that kind of cult following that still want to talk about it all these years later on Facebook, I think that's quite incredible.
That's massive for a group on Facebook to have that many members. Is
100%.
Enormous. I don't know of any other film that would have, I suppose, like in the horror genre, one that I would think of would have that type of following would be Halloween, as an example. That type of cult, die-hard love for the film. But that is huge. I don't think I'd dare join it.
You should definitely join it. I'm going to invite you. And another thing I think is crazy as well is that there's another group on Facebook, and that's called Bram Stoker's Dracula. Now, this one's a little bit more open. I mean, everyone talks about all kinds of Dracula portrayals in there. That's what it's for. It's a homage for Dracula, and that still mainly has the branding of Coppola's film. So this is the second group that has 176,000 members.
Wow. Crikey, I need to get in on these Facebook groups, clearly.
Yeah. Which is crazy. I mean, I've posted some of these pieces in there, and just it's gone crazy.
I was about to say, crazy. I bet people will have gone absolutely wild for that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've got a friend, Rob, who I'm going to send this to. So, hi, Rob. And Rob actually owns, he calls it the Crimson Room. And I joined, and I met Rob, and you'll love this. I met Rob through a group looking at movie props, because movie props from Bram Stoker's Dracula go on sale quite a lot. There's a lot out there. And I actually saw some auctions for sort of the castle, the castle prop. It was huge, and the bed. And Rob collects Bram Stoker's Dracula props. This is his forte. This is what he does.
Right.
And I commented saying, "Guys, is there any Bram Stoker's Dracula props?" He says, "Yes, there are, Sam, but I'm going to warn you right now that they'll be mine. The blood is the life, and the auctions will be mine." And he bought them, and he has a room dedicated to them. And what he did as well is he gained lots of attention online, and he actually got James V. Hart, who wrote the screenplay for this film. Yeah. And he got him round to the Crimson Room. I was invited. I couldn't go because it was in New York, and I was going through a time, and I couldn't go. I was invited. And he had people around for drinks, and he had James V. Hart, who came to his house and talked to him about all these props that he'd bought and how they sort of came into the film, etc. And James, he's alive in these groups, by the way. He's sort of active in these groups, and he talks about it. And I said to him, "What's your favourite part of the film, James?" And he answered, and he said, "My favourite part of the film is the part and I think he wrote, which is not in any other Dracula script, is where, of course, Dracula reunites with Elizabeta essentially and makes Mina remember who, like, essentially she's a reincarnation of.
Yes.
That's his favourite scene.
Love that.
Yeah.
Oh, what a nice little nugget. And you'll have to plan in a trip to New York at some point and get yourself
Should
to
we
the
go?
Crimson Room. Yeah, should we do it? We
Yeah, let's
can
go.
we can build it into the film budget. We'll class it as
Yeah.
research for our
Oh, yeah,
Yorkshire
we could do that.
Dracula.
I'm sure Rob wouldn't mind, but yeah, I went on a little bit of a tangent there, but I think that's so cool that James V. Hart is still
Yeah.
also active in this community, and he's going to fans' houses, having some drinks and telling them about
Yeah.
the film. I think that's incredible. You don't hear about that a lot, do you?
No. Well, and it just shows the love that he has for the story, and even after production and release, and we know that it was a big success, but sometimes actors, writers can look back on a film, even if it has been an enormous success. Robert Pattinson, Twilight, as an example,
Yeah.
like and hate the part that they played in it, hate their involvement with it, cringe at it, but not in this case. Clearly, like absolute love for the film, which I think is amazing.
So refreshing, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, very good. Anything else that you want to touch on?
You know what? I think we've got to, like, we've touched on so many points of the film, haven't we? I think back on the film. I watch the film like at least maybe twice a year, I'd say. I try and keep it relatively fresh in my mind because there's always something new that you spot as well.
Yeah.
I want to talk about what you don't, and I'd love to know what you don't like about the film. Now, we've already spoken about sort of Keanu, and I've spoken about Winona personally. One more issue for me, and this is just me being, if you like, a classic fanboy, is I think that they get rid of him a little bit too quick at the end.
Yeah.
I think it sort of comes to a crescendo and it ends very abruptly.
Yes.
He's sort of this huge, powerful figure, and they sort of write him off pretty quickly. And I brought it up to my dad many a times. That poor man, God, he's been asked too many questions by me. And I said, Dad. They get him a bit easier at the end, and he says, "Well, you've got to remember at this time, essentially, he's not at full power. He's quite frankly in a very vulnerable state. Still manages to put up a fight, and then they take him out. But for me, that's always been
a bit
something.
too convenient. Maybe.
What about you? What are some things about this film that, I mean, I guess there won't be many, but what are things that you don't like?
I think it's a really good point regarding the ending, because we could have something far greater and more impactful, and him putting up more of a fight at the end.
Yeah.
We've obviously touched on Keanu Reeves' accent. The only other thing, I would maybe shave it by 15 minutes.
Would you?
Like, yeah, it's got a runtime of just over 2 hours, and I think on rewatch now, like, the common theme with horror films, especially because this, like, it does fall into the horror sub genre.
I agree.
Is people don't want super long run times. Like, we've seen that with Nosferatu. Like, people really struggled with that run time. We didn't. We want a longer run time, which is why we want the extended cut. But for a broader audience, you're talking 90 minutes or less for a horror film. This is something like 2 hours, 10 minutes. I think if you just shaved it by 10, 15 minutes, just get it under that 2 hours. That would be my only other critique. I appear to have lost Sam. We'll see if he rejoins us, but that was probably quite a good note to end it on without him even realising. So I'm going to wrap things up a little bit here. And in Sam's absence, I would thank him for appearing and being my little bookend to my Gothic chapter. He is one of my besties, and I love having him on here. And if you don't follow him already, you absolutely should do. He is known as Celebro online. He has a TikTok, he has an Instagram, he has a YouTube channel. You've heard him and seen him talking about his models that he has. That is a glimpse into what is a very large collection that he has, and the models he has are so impressive. I am so jealous. I'm not even a model collector, but like you said, I am absolutely stealing those when I go around to his. So he needs to keep them under lock and key. But I have really enjoyed talking about Bram Stoker's Dracula. this week, and it's been a fantastic way to close out this gothic horror dive into the subgenre. I am going to tie things up with one more episode on gothic horror, where I'm going to be doing a ranking of top gothic horror films. So, and then I am moving on to the torture horror subgenre. I'd love to know what your favorite torture, gory, splatter horror films are. So please do let me know on my socials. Come and have a chat with me about your favorite horror films. I love talking to people about their favorite films, and I'd love to talk to you. He's managed to come back.
My phone literally died. We got that excited that my phone literally died on me. I am so sorry. Like, it didn't even give me a battery warning, bro. What is going on?
Well, I did you a favour and did your socials and plugged your socials for you and rounded things off by saying what an incredible model collection you have, and for people to go and follow you if they want to see more.
I am such a bad friend. I'm sorry. I have been a nightmare to record with him. I don't know what's been fucking happening, darling. It's been a fucking disaster.
Well, before you go, I was just talking about the fact that torture horror is going to be my next subgenre. Have you got a favourite torture horror?
Torture horror?
Oh, he's new to the horror genre, is our Sam.
Do I know a torture horror? I mean, listen, I've seen...
You're going to get to know.
If you don't know, get to know.
Yeah.
I've seen the first 3 Saw films, and I still wonder why we're making more. I don't fucking get it. Sorry, gang. Shots fired.
Bang, bang.
I thought Hostel was great. Hostel was really...
Hostel.
Yeah.
Hostel's a great one.
I thought the first 3 Saw films were great. I really did. But yeah, torture horror, I think that's probably something that you need to teach me a little bit about.
Well, I will be doing just that, because I will be doing a full episode on the Saw franchise, where I'm going to be joined by your favourite, Sam, my sister, Miss Molliana, who has just watched the Saw films for the first time. So we'll be coming at it from the angle of someone who's seen it for the first time versus me who's seen it God knows how many times. I will be talking all things Hostel in a deep dive on the 3 films, along with a load of other torture films that you probably never even heard of, Sam. So you can follow along in the coming weeks, and I'll see if I get you on for one of those, maybe Hostel.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, set me some homework, tell me a film to watch, and we can do it. We can talk about it, of course. Anything I can do. And I won't be as chaotic. By the way, this is me personified. Like, this, if this is your thing, then definitely drop a follow, because I'm just all over the place.
Please do go and follow Sam Celebro on his socials, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. Go look at his incredible collection. He does brilliant film reviews as well. He's super passionate about all film, not just horror like me. And go and tell him on his TikTok lives what your favourite film is, and he'll tell you whether that's a good choice or not.
Yeah, do that. I'd love to have you over. Thank you for having me, Zara. It's been a pleasure as always.
Thank you for joining me, as always. It's been great to have you as a little bookend on my gothic horror episode.
Yeah,
and if anyone wants to come and chat to us in the comments, follow us both on social media. You've got @RateScary on YouTube and Instagram, and @ScaryZaraMary on TikTok, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Threads. Otherwise, see thee with this end. I'll see thee soon.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
I'll be right back.
Game over. It's all for you.
Beware the moonlights.
An excellent day for an exorcism.
I'm your number 1 fan.